open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
I'm not hearing anything either. Hello, Kentuckiana. I'm your host, Dr. Lance Pearson of the Kentucky Liberty Caucus and the Louisville Tea Party. You're listening to Kentucky's Voice, very likely on 970 AM WGTK. That is our main radio station. I do want to let our listeners know about other options on how you can view a video of this broadcast. You can, listen to this also through that video feed. The first is you can go to either Facebook or YouTube. Go to the Kentucky's Voice channel. So just search for Kentucky's Voice, and you will find either a live tab on YouTube, or if you go to the Kentucky's Voice Facebook page, this will be streamed on one of those two. There's two Kentucky's Voice pages. If you don't see it immediately on the first one, go to the other one. All right, so those are our live streams of our podcast. I want to especially highlight that YouTube link because we will cut up the video of this segment, and we will have either YouTube Shorts, Facebook, Instagram Live Reels, various short videos that get posted and archived on there. So if you go to that YouTube channel for Kentucky's Voice, you will be able to find some of this old video. I have two guests today, and actually both have been on the program before, but in promoting something different. So you will be able to go back and look at some of the archive footage of that as well. I want to let people know that if you want to call in, if you want to text into our show with questions or comments, I'm going to make my best attempt today to really include those comments. You can text that to 502-571-0970. I repeat, that's 502-571-0970. This show will also be rebroadcast on WBNN, or BNA, I'm sorry. That's on Channel 21 if you have Spectrum TV. So on Spectrum TV, go to Channel 21. This is rebroadcast at 12:30, at 4, and at 7 p.m. tonight. So feel free to just click over there. Make sure that you watch the whole program because we will have interesting comment in each one of our segments. Today, we're going to be talking about Louisville issues in particular. Now, I'll mention a little bit about some international things right here in a second, but really the focus of today's show is going to be on the Louisville mayor's race that's going to be coming up in the fall. But we just finished the we finished the nonpartisan primary, and we want to have a long discussion with one of the candidates who has filed as a write-in contender for that race. And so we'll have discussion about what that means, how that gives you an additional option on your ballot if you don't like the two that are going to be listed immediately on that ballot. And I recommend that you go ahead and write in the name Yoakum. We'll get to that in a second, but our guest is Jeff Yoakum, as well as his campaign manager, who is named Donald Pay. So we'll discuss that. Before we get into that, we got a minute in this intro. I want to mention the Iran war. So obviously there have been hostilities. If you've been paying attention to the news over this last weekend, we've been promised that there was going to be a ceasefire agreement, which may or may not have just happened very recently, but also a deal to end this Iranian war or military excursion, whatever you want to call that. Apparently, Israel attacked some sites in southern Lebanon. Iran decided to respond by shooting some missiles into Israel, and Israel responded to that by shooting a bunch of missiles into Tehran. So I just want to encourage our listeners to stay up on local events, but especially when we're dealing with matters of war, try to find reliable sources on both sides of the topic. Go to sites like Real Clear Politics to see both sides of these topics and get an impartial, or if you can't find impartial, get sources from both the left and the right when they're talking about these serious issues. Okay, join us after the break. We'll be talking about Louisville area issues, in particular the Louisville mayor's race.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson. I'm the president of the Kentucky Liberty Caucus as well as the Louisville Tea Party. We're in our first long segment for today. I do want to do a couple of promotions. There will be a meeting of the Louisville Tea Party on Thursday, and you can find that meeting. It's open to, any person that's conservative and interested in local politics and state politics. I encourage you to come. That's at 6 p.m. You can get there at 5:30 for a little social time and to order some food. That's at Roosters in Middletown. I believe the address is 10,430 Shelbyville Road. But Roosters in the back room, I encourage you to come out. We're going to have a lot of candidates talking. We're also going to have some information about election integrity. So we're going to have Andy Mangione of the Election Integrity Network, as well as various local candidates, including a couple of school board candidates. And we haven't really gotten into school board elections quite yet. There has actually been a drastic change in the way that we're doing school board elections. In the fall, we will be voting for one of 5 replacements for the current 7-person board that makes up the Jefferson County Public Schools Board of Education. So we will be replacing the entire Board of Education due to a state law that passed this past time. So you'll want to be very informed about the candidates that are going to be on this ballot. I believe those are going to be nonpartisan races as well. So you really need to know. You can't just rely on an R or a D being next to the person's name. Okay. My guest today, who I'm very honored to have on, are Jeff Yoakum, who is a write-in candidate for the Louisville mayor's race, as well as his campaign manager, who you may have met on this show before, by the name of Donald Pay. Donald Pay ran against Maria Rodriguez for the U.S. House seat for number 3, the Kentucky 3 congressional district, which Maria Rodriguez ultimately won the primary for. But Donald Pay ran a very good campaign, and he's decided to transition over into being a campaign manager for Jeff Yoakum. Okay, so what is the situation? The Louisville mayor's race, which we just had a primary for, which selected the 2 highest vote getters. Those 2 highest vote getters are both Democrats, well-known Democrats, by the name of Craig Greenberg, our current mayor, as well as a socialist member of our Louisville Metro Council by the name of Shamika Parrish Wright. Those will be the 2 names that are directly on the ballot. I would not be enthusiastic about voting for either of those people, quite frankly. I don't think most of our listeners or viewers would be interested. There was, however, one name that appeared on the ballot, although he was not technically running in that primary. Jeff Yoakum pulled out. He withdrew ahead of that race, which enabled him to now come back and run as a write-in candidate, and that is what he has done. So Jeff Yoakum is a reliable conservative. He lives in the South End. We'll let him introduce himself here in a second, but there will be a Republican option on the ballot. You will, however, have to go to that Louisville mayor's race in the fall and write in the word Yoakum, Y-O-C-U-M, on that ballot to get your vote registered. If you do not appreciate the last 60, 70 years of Democrat rule of Louisville and think that we could do better, I encourage you to go ahead and write in an actual Republican name on that Louisville mayor's race. If he were to collect enough votes, and let's make no bones about it, this is a long shot candidacy. Any sort of write-in candidate is at a huge disadvantage. But nevertheless, I would not feel good about voting for either of the Democrats, to be quite blunt. And so I encourage you to go ahead and write in an actual conservative Republican into that race. And so we're going to hear for most of the show from Jeff Yoakum, dealing with a lot of issues with the city of Louisville. So let me go ahead and bring on Jeff. So Jeff, both you and Donald, and we'll flip over to Donald in just a second, are battle tested. Now, you were in the U.S. Navy. You're a veteran. I think we even have a little bit on the screen there. We've got a little bit of clips of some of your Navy awards that you've won, commendations. And you actually ran most of that Louisville primary race as a candidate. So you are a campaign veteran, as is your campaign manager, Donald Pay. So what made you decide to basically team up with Donald to have him be your campaign manager to help out in this bid? And what is it that you think frustrates Louisville voters that would make them want to make a change, whether that be a socialist change, which we certainly don't want in Shamika Parish Right, or a change to Republican governorship or governance in the Louisville mayor's office?
Hey, once again, I want to say thank you. Make this very clear, Lance. Being a guest on your show, it's a huge honor, and I'm grateful for it, because the other media outlets out there, they do not want to talk to me. And there's a lot of things going wrong in the city, and I was in the primary as, a person who cares about the city. And the way everything happened was I refused to take money from people. And, because I think the will of the people, they've had enough. They want something new. They want change. And they're not getting it. And there were so many Republicans in the race that I chose the one that I thought was most organized and a good leader in Tina Burnell. So I chose to withdraw and endorse her to bring our vote, because we're both out of South Louisville. So I tried to unify our voters so that we had a real chance, right? Well, we ended up in third place, but I had officially withdrew. So I am now eligible as your candidate in the write-in. And it's not hard. It's 5 letters. And if people are going to say that their voters are not smart enough to write 5 letters, that's an insult to you all.
Right.
Yoakum, and it's really not hard to remember. What was the thing we was talking about the other day? It is your only choice undoing mayhem. It's really not that hard. If you write 5 letters, you can say, hey, look, I'm not supporting the DNC or the DSA. But when there's leaders, and I haven't begun a war yet, but it's very possible it will happen between now and November. But I'm tired of the insults. And the sad part of it is they're coming from my own party. And it's going to stop today. The insults about I don't have leadership ability or whatnot. I don't know if your cameraman can catch the other names and things laying on the table here. But they say that I don't have training. Well, here, this is part of a training jacket. And if you want to, and that's what I was telling Lance, but I'm about to just throw it all over my shoulder because, apparently it means nothing to them. They say, what have you done? What leadership ability do you have? Yeah. Operational risk management, anything you can think of. I have been there and I have done that. And then I was retired. And yes, I only served 1 tour, but I was injured with holes through both eardrums and they forced me to retire. I didn't want to retire. I was forced to retire. But the things you're going to keep hearing as this race progresses, a lot of people are out there selling Craig Greenberg as some great champion. They're saying, vote for the lesser of two evils. Well, a great man has told me that that is still evil. Yeah. So, no, you don't have to do that. You have 3 candidates in this race now. So, what's the other one? Craig Greenberg works with us. Do you all really believe that? And that's a true message that I want you all to sit there and do you all really believe that? I was going to bring in one of his mailers that says Democrat Craig Greenberg for Louisville mayor. He is DNC through and through. And my question is he working with those that, say he works with us, or is he outsmarting them at every turn? He is a very smart man, and I am honored to challenge him. I look forward. Hopefully I get the opportunity to debate him. It's probably not going to happen because he never came to any of the things. And also remember this, I was the first name in the race, 11/5/2025. I was there when the county clerk's office opened, and I was the first name on the ballot. Right. Craig Greenberg, I think, came in a month or so later. But
yeah. Okay, so
yes,
just taking off on some of what he said there. So Jeff pulled out of the race about a month before the end, maybe 3 weeks before the end.
May 4th.
May 4th. Okay, so a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks ahead of the primary, and he endorsed another candidate in the primary that had some similar background to him, Tina Burnell, who was from the South End and runs the Louisville Metro Watchdog Alliance. And so he backed her in that before pulling out of the race. The fact that he did pull out of the race ahead of time, though, is what allows him to run as a write-in candidate and gives you the option of picking him and having a Republican choice on that ballot. I do want to emphasize that point that he made, that the lesser of two evils is still evil. I think that's a great message, and that's kind of the logic I would use when I'm going in there. All right. Do I think Craig Greenberg is better than Shamika Parrish-Wright? We'll get into all this. Absolutely. Do I think that Shamika Parrish-Wright is going to beat Craig Greenberg anyway? No. I mean, she got less than half of the amount of votes that he had when they were both just on the ballot. So it's like that's not a real choice. The choice is whether you're going to go ahead and endorse Democrats on the ballot or you're going to opt for an option of having a conservative Republican on that ballot. And so I encourage our listeners to go ahead and write in Yoakum, Y-O-C-U-M. All right. I want to flip over here to Donald Pay. Donald agreed to be the campaign manager for Jeff Yoakum in this. And so Donald Pay just got off a run for U.S. Congress. So just tell me a little bit, what are some of the lessons, and we can carry this over the break. What are some of the lessons that you learned from that race with Maria Rodriguez that maybe you can help Jeff with in his race? So like what lessons or maybe techniques, strategies have you garnered from your own run that you can help to translate into this run for mayor?
Yeah, absolutely. And it certainly does help to have run my own campaign before to have that experience and bring it in to help Jeff. And, I think, at the end of the day, it is just about reaching the people. And there are just so many new tools out there now that we have available to do that. And that's one of the things that having to learn that firsthand, it's just having to use all of the different tools to reach out to the people in the community, because really that's what it's all about. It's about the people, and and if there's one thing that Jeff and I have in common, it's just we love this city, we love Louisville, and we love the people of this city, and so we want to see this city do well. But it's just most people who are busy with their jobs and aren't aware that we just have to reach them, and at the end of the day,
join us after the break.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson, president of the Kentucky Liberty Caucus and the Louisville Tea Party. If you would like to text in to our text line, you can do that at 502-571-0970. I will do my best to work in some of these comments since we're interviewing basically one of the candidates for Louisville mayor. I'm sure there's some local interest in that race. If you've got a question for Jeff, that's, reasonable. We'll try to work it into the show. Not just every text is going to make it on, but we'll try to work it into the show. I'm also joined with Donald Pay, who is Jeff's campaign manager on this. He was also a candidate for the U.S. congressional seat that's currently held by Morgan McGarvey, so the Louisville area congressional race. So let me just finish off that conversation that we had with Donald. What are some of the strategies that maybe you picked up on during your run that you think are going to be beneficial to help Jeff getting his name out, getting people when they walk into that room? They just need to remember YOCUM to write that in on that. There will be a blank line there that you can write in another candidate's name. But what are some of the techniques and lessons that maybe you learned from your first congressional run, but I think for the first run that you've ever had for a public office, what are some of those lessons that maybe you can translate over into Jeff's campaign?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a little bit of a different race because, being a nonpartisan race really made it more difficult for the conservatives to have a seat at the table. So really our main message is what you just said, write in YOCUM, because that is going to be the only way that conservatives and independents have a voice at the ballot this election cycle. And so really using those tools that we talked about earlier, there's so many different ways, whether it's social media, advertisements, especially yard signs. We need people to see write in YOCUM so that everybody knows that when they go to the ballot, they have that battle plan, that they're not going there being forced to vote for a Democrat or a Democrat socialist, but that they have Jeff YOCUM as an option, who is a conservative and a strong candidate at that. So
right. Now, before we move on, what are the options that people can use in order to find out more about Jeff? I know you've got a website set up. Is there a donation link on that website?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
So, YOCUMforLouisville.com, and that is where everything is. That's like the hub for the campaign. And alternatively, you can go to the social media pages as well, but there is a donation link. And there's also a volunteer sign-up form as well, and we've already got a huge team of people that are ready and willing, and they've already signed up, and we've got a lot of volunteers on staff right now. So we're excited to keep the campaign rolling.
Absolutely. Okay, let me just reiterate, and I'll say this a couple times during our show. YOCUM for Louisville, spell all of that out.com. So YOCUM, YOCUM for Louisville.com. There's a donation link on there, and if you've ever run a campaign, you know how much campaign signs or mailers or anything else that you might want to run that takes real money. So if you've got a little extra change and you want to have an actual Republican or independent choice on the ballot rather than being forced to vote for a Greenberg or a Shamika Parrish Wright, Jeff YOCUM is that plan. And so we need to get that name out, make sure we've got good name ID. Okay, let me transition back over to Jeff. So Jeff, you're a longtime Louisville resident. Were you born in Louisville, by the way?
I was born in Fort Knox because my parents, DOD, and my dad was active duty, Vietnam. He's actually considered a hero in a lot of circles. But, yep, I was born at Fort Knox, taken straight off Pendleton Road, Diane Avenue, born and raised, never left the city outside of service to this country.
Yep. Okay, so longtime Louisville native, and I consider Fort Knox really an extension of Louisville. I mean, obviously, if you drive down Dixie Highway, you'll feel the same way. So talk about some of the strengths of Louisville. Obviously, you've got a lot of criticisms that we're going to go into of the way that the city has been mismanaged, but it's a great city. You've lived here your whole life, basically. I've lived here most of my life as well. So there's great things happening in the city. We're not going to say that everything is negative. So what are some of the strengths of Louisville that you want to try to build on if people put their faith in you and write YOCUM in and you actually get elected to this position?
Well, we have a rare opportunity presented before us, and the strengths of Louisville, there's good people all over. And everybody knows the truth that in the beginning, when I joined the race back November of last year, I told them, I said, if we lose and you all put Greenberg back in there, me and my family's leaving. But because of this right here, I am retired military. I don't need a job. It's you all that can get me off the bench and serving again. And I would be honored to do so. But I don't need the job. I don't need money. But over 400,000 people are trapped in this city. They cannot leave. So if you all keep on reelecting the same type of leadership since 1969, and guess what? I live in the present times. I don't live in the past. I'm not living in the future. Mayor Craig Greenberg lives in the future. We've came a long way, Louisville. We just need a little bit more of your money and tax dollars, and we're going to get there. I promise you that. If you all really feel that way, then please go ahead and vote for Craig Greenberg. But it's not happening. And I'm sorry. I'm just being honest. And then you need to understand, there's 158,000 registered Republicans in Louisville, and now over 70,000 independents. You know, they could vote. But look how low the turnout was. 3 out of 4 people did not vote. And the thing that really surprised them all is they feel that the socialists are saying this is election interference. No, I did everything the correct way. And God put this path before me, and I did it legally. I dropped out of the race to endorse another. So we do have a chance. You're going to have 2 Democrat candidates that are going to fight one another. If everyone that voted for Bill Dyruff, if they were willing to support me, plus some of the independents, we can change things that have not been changed since 1969. Right. But I need help.
That's right. Now, just to get a couple of things off of our text line, yes, you did hear earlier in the race that we were replacing the entire Jefferson County Public Schools school board. There are currently 7 members of that board. A state law was just passed where all of those people will be replaced, but the people that are currently in those seats, they can run again, just depending on which district they live in. There will be 5 that will be on your ballot, and we will deal with that in future shows, no question. Another question that came in, and we can go ahead and jump into this. What are some of the problems that you want to deal with in the city? So just like day one, what's the biggest thing that you want to come in and really start focusing in on? And in particular, and we'll get to this especially later on in the show, but what are your plans to help out with the Louisville Metro Police and the fire departments? I know a lot of them, not only is it a staffing issue, it's also an equipment issue. So, like, just what's the biggest thing you want to focus in, like right on day one if you get elected? And then what are your plans to kind of help out with Metro PD and the fire departments?
Yeah, this is a great topic, right? Well, Craig Greenberg's out here telling you all crime is down 40% and they're going to do whatever they can with stats and try to make him look good. It's not true. The people in all areas of Louisville are like, what is going on here? What is going on here? And we're in this situation because people in the primary chose not to vote. My one vote don't matter. They didn't vote. LMPD needs support. You know, there's a lot of bad things going on, and hopefully we get to talk about some of them, but you must stand with law enforcement. Without law and order, our city's in a lot of trouble. It really is. And the thing that really hurts my feeling, we had an incident recently with the naked man being shot and, you know, by an officer. But guess what? He couldn't use his taser, and you can look at LMPD policies. He was by himself. When he's by himself, he's not to deploy his taser. He's to defend him. He backed off. But the thing that makes me mad, and I don't know who's right and wrong, and any loss of life is horrible, but here's the truth of it. When Mayor Craig Greenberg took that stage and condemned that officer and said, I want him terminated, and then he took his chief of police and had him do the exact same thing, it's wrong. That man, he deserves his due process, you know, until this is during an ongoing investigation. Shouldn't the chief of police say, look, Greenberg, I'm not going along with that. I'm going to defend my officer until I have reasons otherwise. So, yes, during the investigation, like, your political nonsense, stay out of it. That's what right. I would do with the chief of police in there. But you have to have the military style of leadership and chain of command and trust with the people in the community. And if somebody fails, hold them accountable. But during an ongoing investigation, and you stand on a stage and condemn somebody that wore a uniform, you never had the courage in your life to wear any, whether it be LMPD or military.
Yep.
But you say you support us, Craig Greenberg, you absolutely do not.
Okay. After the break, we're going to continue this discussion on crime, which is obviously a big focus for people. Join us after the break.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson, with the Louisville Tea Party as well as the Kentucky Liberty Caucus. I want to remind people, if you want to text into the show with some questions for Jeff Yoakum, who is running a write-in campaign for Louisville mayor as a conservative Republican, but who also has lots of appeal for independents and even conservative Democrats that don't feel like they have been represented for the last 60, 70 years of Democrat rule of Louisville, you do have an option on your ballot, and that's writing in Y-O-C-U-M, Yoakum, Y-O-C-U-M. Okay, at the end of the last segment, we started talking a little bit about crime and what we can do to bolster both the fire departments as well as Louisville Metro, and I'm sure this is central on the minds of a lot of the people listening, is how do we get crime down? If we want to build our city, the first thing we need to do is clean up the streets and get criminals behind bars and have more police presence so that we have less crime and businesses can relocate to Louisville rather than us losing businesses to southern Indiana and elsewhere. So what are some of your thoughts? I think the stats that Greenberg has been citing is that maybe that shootings or homicides this year are down about 20%. Whatever, it doesn't feel like it. I know that, and you mentioned that as well. So what is it that you think is the biggest thing that would help as mayor in order to get more officers, to help out the LMPD and get crime down?
Well, when you go to do a job, you want your boss to have your back, right? They do not feel that way right now. LMPD, their morale is busted up and low. You know, you maybe not those at the top that are making $200,000 to $300,000 plus a year. Like, I'm sure they're real comfortable. But those officers that are out there on patrol and the ones that show up to protect and serve, and here's another one I'll share with you. I have it from a very good source that I trust. You don't have to trust it or believe it because, like I said, I always stay in fact. But how about this? I think it's class 59 and 60 that were just pushed through. This, I think I was told it was 80% of the class failed against the red men. That's when they have to fight and toe-to-toe and fight. But I got it on good word that they were told to go ahead and push those officers through because they needed the manpower, right? So you're putting officers out here with that are not passing certain standards but because you want to get the numbers up, we are short hundreds of officers. But if they knew that the people in the city, that they're needed and we need the numbers to go up quickly, that's the thing. As a mayor, I would make sure that LMPD is fully staffed and all their requests are fulfilled.
Yeah.
They can't do nothing depleted like this. This is why it takes forever for a police officer to respond to you. You know, your public safety, that should be the number one concern of any mayor anywhere in America.
That's
And
right.
I stand on that. And I back the blue, and I will continue to do so. Law enforcement is law enforcement, and that thank God, thank each and every one of you that wear a uniform. God bless you, and know that there is somebody in this city that would be honored to support you.
That's right. Now, and I think just to kind of piggyback on what Jeff just said there, the alternatives on the ballot, I basically have no answers in law enforcement. Let's just be honest about that. Greenberg has been on the job for 4 years. We're still 400 officers down, according to Louisville Metro PD. So obviously in 4 years, we haven't been able to rectify the situation, and we're still down, 300 officers. So he's obviously not able to fix this problem. Shamika Parrish-Wright has her kind of nutty approach. I think she has said that public safety should involve housing people, mental health, and investing in neighborhoods. All right. I don't necessarily disagree with any of those things, but what we need is a focus on crime and crime reduction, like not these touchy-feely things where we're trying to blend together every need that the city has under the banner of law enforcement. Law enforcement is about is about backing the blue, recruiting new candidates, and having those candidates being highly trained, not just pushing through anybody that happens to apply. All right, so let me go ahead and transition a little bit over into another topic. I think people a month ago or so, they got their tax bills. They had to actually file their federal taxes, but also some of their state and local. And I know it was sticker shock for a lot of people in this city in terms of the amount of taxes that they have to pay. So talk a little bit about what, people are feeling in terms of taxes and what you hope to do in terms of tax policy, just basically what the focus should be on for the city in order to get businesses to move in, to get longtime property owners here in the city to stay here rather than moving to other jurisdictions with less tax. So what's your priority there?
It's actually very, very concerning, and I hate to say it, but like when you open those tax bills and you're paying what you're paying, a lot of people, and when I'm out door knocking or talking or going to meetings, they're like, what is going on here? But Craig Greenberg, he's a genius at what he does. He knows. He's going to say, oh, that's not us, that's the state, or this or that. Me, as a mayor, I would fight for the taxpayers who feel no representation at all. That's probably why 3 out of 4 of you did not vote. You're tired. You're out there working 2, 3. It's insane what's happening in Louisville and what happened right after the primary. I like to point this one out. MSD waited and they thought all conservative candidates are eliminated and hey, we can do what we want. Let's go ahead and show them the 4%. Well, 3.9%. Let me round that to 4% increase that you all are going to be paying. So things like that, anything, and I am not a tax expert. I didn't work at Todd Brown and Frost and manipulating around with new market tax credits. I'm not a tax expert, but I guarantee you this, I'm a team builder. And if the people trust me enough that I think we would need around 90,000 votes, if I go in there, I guarantee you I'll have an expert and I will make it very clear. You will do anything and everything in your power to protect and we will pull the curtains back and be very transparent to you. It's your money. It's not Craig Greenberg's. It's yours.
Right.
So it's time we start getting accountability and truth about where the money's going, why everything is happening. MSD going up 4%. Go ahead. If you vote for him for another 4 years, what do you think is going to happen in those 4 years? Yeah. You're going to get another 4%, another 8% until you're bled out and you have no money left and they end up taking your deed, which they also happen to be doing.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just kind of piggyback on some of that. I have a neighbor who has a property that splits a little bit of Jefferson County as well as part of Oldham County. And he actually gets a bigger tax bill for the portion of his property that's in Jefferson County than the portion that Oldham County, and the house is in Oldham County. So just like empty property that's being used, it's zoned agriculture, he gets a bigger tax bill from Louisville than he does from Oldham County, even though his house is actually in Oldham County, and that's where it gets taxed. So the tax rate that Louisville pays is just insane, let's face it. And what are we getting for that? A huge part of that tax bill goes to Jefferson County Public Schools, who can't even maintain a balanced budget. We've got hundreds of millions of dollars, and apparently the school board that was in place didn't even know that, 187, what are we talking? I joke around when we're talking about $180 million in debt. What's a million here or there? Okay, so that's what your tax money is going for, is irresponsible management and wasting that money. And another complaint that I've heard, and maybe you can piggyback on this, is that the city seems to have all kinds of interesting tax deals when it's dealing with these giant corporations or these huge business developers. But when you're a small property owner or a small business owner in this city, it's like the city doesn't hear anything about you. You don't hear about the local corner shop or the gas station at the end of the road, or maybe the person that's running a daycare out of their house. You don't hear about tax breaks for them, but you hear about tax breaks from Churchill Downs, or there's the mayor has talked the General Assembly into giving tens of millions of dollars to remodel a giant corporation's idle building. All right, so can you just talk a little bit about how the tax code and the focus of the city seems to be on large corporations and giant businesses, when most of the jobs in this city are provided by small business owners who just seem to be neglected? So can you just talk a little bit about that?
Well, that's actually a good one. I'd love to talk about that. Yeah. Why do you think that majority, like they talk about the endorsements through the primaries and whatnot, why was I the one that had more endorsements than all other candidates combined? They were mostly all your small businesses throughout, and guess who they still stand with? Me. So, and that's the truth of it. I felt that if you want to be a leader, you should be financially responsible, right? So I spent $15,000 to $20,000, I think, Donald, out of my own pocket because I didn't want to take money from others. You know, I didn't think that, but now I've learned that it is a necessary evil, and we have to go after Craig Greenberg. And the only way to do that is pocketbooks. So whenever they want to do the wallet war, you know, I'm just one of your veterans. I'm responsible and do well, but he's a titan. And I'm not trying to get off topic, but there is just so much flowing through my head right now that you all honestly, like, if you want to get me off the bench and into this fight, please send me, send me. And the other is, I am a strong Christian too, and our faith is so under it. And I think we're gonna go into that a little bit, but Christianity is under attack. So I'm not afraid. I am a Christian. I'm not abandoning my city. I'm trying to help everyone that lives here, the ones that are trapped. And the question is where are the leaders? Where are they when they have a conservative Republican? Because I would like to hear their endorsements. Craig Greenberg sits at a goose egg on that. Yeah. I want to hear their endorsements. Go ahead. If you support him, endorse him. That's the right thing to do. And then when their careers, good luck with that. And I'm just going to leave it there.
Right. Okay. And so a related topic to this, Greenberg has gotten a lot of publicity. He's always on the TV, it seems like, promoting the next development project that the city is doing in terms of the Belvedere, remodeling the Humana building. All right.
Can I touch on that?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, the Humana building, who was that? Who's that deal with? They've got the monopoly. When you got a monopoly, buddy, you just start, you ever played Monopoly? They're slapping them hotels up, and it's going to cost you all. You need to understand that. But I'll tell you this. His partner in that is Steve Poe. His other partner in that is Humana. Guess who they sit on the board of? Lida, which is now what? Craig Greenberg's trying to disappear from it real quick like a little magician, right? I'm out of there. Yeah. And now they're turning it over to what? One Louisville?
Right.
Look in the past, and I'll give you, and so that people do research, I'm not just going to tell you it all. See if Craig Greenberg and Steve Poe tried to do something a long time ago for over $400 million, and they failed. Yeah. They blamed it on recession. Well, there comes Craig Greenberg back with his developer buddies like, well, if you're the mayor, we could do anything we want. Well, there he sits, but I'm just going to stop there and let the people do their own research. See if Steve Poe and Craig Greenberg have a history together. It's the inner circle of friends and the money, brothers and sisters. It is flowing. Yeah. It's your money.
Well, and just to put a cap on that, it just seems like at Louisville, we're at kind of a tipping point where the South End and the East End have had enough of these glamour projects that are happening in the downtown area getting all the focus, and that tax revenue being filtered out of the South End and the East End with no return. Join us after the break. We'll finish with Jeff Yoakum.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
All right, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice on 970 AM. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson with the Kentucky Liberty Caucus, as well as the Louisville Tea Party, who I want to reiterate is having a meeting this Thursday. That's at 6 p.m. at Roosters in Middletown, 10430 Shelbyville Road. We will have various local candidates, a couple of those school board people that have filed to run for school board. We'll have Lonnie Joseph. Jeff always has an invite. If Jeff wants to come in, he can speak. We also will have some information from the Election Integrity Network talking about how we basically change some of our state laws and get people involved in the fight for election integrity. Okay. Today we have been talking with Jeff Yoakum, who is running as a write-in candidate for Louisville mayor, as well as his campaign manager, Donald Pay, who ran for the U.S. congressional seat Kentucky 3, which is the Louisville area. And so if you've been listening to these segments, and I hope you have, you've heard Jeff talking about especially crime issues, as well as the attempt to balance our tax code so that it isn't all of the burden for supporting the city doesn't come from the East and the South End in order to support glamour projects in the downtown area, as well as basically getting everyone's property taxes down. Louisville and Jefferson County has just insane property tax rates, and part of that is due to the Jefferson County public schools mismanagement and their budget shortfall. So you can bet that there is on the way some increases in taxes in order to pay for that. Okay. Let me go ahead and talk about a couple of sort of hot button issues that have happened in the city recently. Let me go ahead and start with, there was an ordinance proposed by the Louisville Metro Council that attempted to make Louisville a trans safe haven. All right. And what does that mean exactly? Apparently, a trans safe haven means that Metro employees, officers, and contractors, while on duty, or using the metro government property are basically not allowed to enforce state law as it relates to not providing gender affirming health care for children, not providing information about a person's gender identity to any federal government or state or local government. Let's see, another section of this related to you're not able to restrict the ability of transgender or gender nonconforming people to access public accommodations programs or services by the metro government based on gender identity. That doesn't happen anyway, by the way. Not to prohibit entertainment by male or female impersonators or prohibitions on performers wearing non-stereotypical dress and costume. In other words, if a state law gets passed that bans drag performances in front of children, this would prevent any Louisville Metro government employee from actually enforcing that state law. So let me just get your feedback right off the bat. What's your opinion on a trans safe haven and whether Louisville should become one? And I'll talk about some of the legal issues with this in a minute.
Well, the way I see it is that they're requesting special treatment for a special group, and I find that wrong. Right. I support the American flag, the Constitution, and which protects everyone equally.
That's right.
When you start separating people and, we need this just for us, that's wrong. And I was in Metro Hall when they did this, and I'd say we had around 50 allies with us. We opposed it. And I think common sense won that day. And, it's not, you need to understand, this isn't hate that we're saying. It's you already have protections, the same as me, the same as Lance or any other in this city. So setting somebody apart saying, hey, we're so different and so special, we need special treatment, it's wrong. It's not the way the country was founded and built, and it's not it. And I think we can dovetail into the whole 22 Metro Council members signing against your Second Amendment right. Like, a lot of things are going wrong here in Louisville, and it's sad. And those that are talking to me about moving out, please just hang tight. Maybe there's a possibility here when the DNC and the DSA have their war, and maybe a Republican can win and free Louisville since 1969.
Yeah. All right. So if we can put up the graphic that we have, producer. So this trans safe haven ordinance actually went before the Public Safety Committee, which is made up with both Republicans and Democrats. Dan Siam Jr., who is a Republican, is actually the chair of this committee. It's a relatively balanced Metro Council. This motion failed in that committee by a vote of 6-0, with one just voting present. So this did get voted down, but you can bet that something like this is going to come back over. There was actually some split ahead of the vote where some of organizations like I think the Louisville area ACLU and the Fairness Campaign decided not to support this. They thought it would just inspire the State General Assembly to maybe go after Louisville's fairness ordinance. So anyway, for now, this has died, but you can expect that something like this is going to come back up. Just basically, nobody's in favor of mistreating people and not treating people equally based on the law, but we also shouldn't have special provisions, and we definitely shouldn't have the Metro government not following state law. Now, number one, it's not legal for them to do that. This anti-commandeering that we can do with the state, basically not following the federal government. If the federal government makes a mandate, that does not exist at a state level. So this is just basically promoting lawlessness by the Metro Council. Fortunately for now, that's dead, but you can expect something like that to come back up. Okay, the second recent thing that happened in terms of the Louisville Metro Council is 22 members of the Louisville Metro Council signed a letter that promoted various regulations that related to gun control and violent crime in Louisville, and they sent a letter to the General Assembly requesting basically some special provisions that allow Louisville to regulate its own crime issues rather than following state law on these topics. Now, with 22 out of the 26 members signing it, that says that there was general broad support for this, and I want to say there should not have been general broad support for this. There are certain provisions in here that are absolutely, they called this common sense legislation. A couple of these things are common sense. Like, for example, urging the General Assembly, and they shouldn't have even mentioned the General Assembly, by the way. This is actually an issue for Andy Beshear as governor, to prioritize and expedite the opening of the Youth Detention Center. So there's supposed to be a renovation and a reopening of a juvenile detention center in Jefferson County. I know Jeff is in favor of that general concept. The mayor has left it a little bit ambiguous about how in favor of that he is. But Andy Beshear has basically not expedited that. I agree. We need to hurry that up. There are some other things that are in here that are somewhat reasonable, but they basically want Louisville to be able to set their own gun policies. They want to basically have different rules about whether or not certain background checks get approved. The bottom line on all of these things are, number one, state law should trump any local laws. And when we're talking about gun control, and really federal law should trump state law. The bottom line is we have a Second Amendment. And if the federal government doesn't think that these should be generally applicable, one jurisdiction like the city of Louisville imposing their own gun laws, we've already tried that in various cities throughout the United States, and it does nothing. If anything, it actually makes things worse, because anybody that wants to violate those laws is still going to do it, or they're going to go to neighboring areas and they're just going to violate those laws elsewhere and then bring the problem here. So all you're doing is disarming or creating barriers for law-abiding citizens that you're not imposing for criminals. So do you have any thoughts on that? As a veteran, I'm sure you have passionate support for the Second Amendment.
Yes, absolutely. It is not to be infringed upon. And I will tell you all this, another one, it's in your Kentucky State Constitution, your own state's Constitution, that no city, town, or anything will ask for special favor like this. Yep. And if you sit on Metro Council, you should know these things, right? But what do you have to do to be a Metro Council member? Live in an area for a year, be 18 years old, and a registered voter. Does that cover it up?
That's about right. And it's section 59 of the state constitution basically says we're not going to make special laws for certain jurisdictions, except for there's a small section of exemptions from that, which does not include this.
In my opinion, I think a leader should know that. Would you agree?
I would agree.
There you go. And here's the other. I'm so tired of this. Greenberg works with us and everything else, because if that is true, this would also be true. That means Beshear works with Frankfurt. Right? Because Greenberg and Beshear are friends. One's pushing pre-K for all while the other pushes Thrive by 5. Right? It's the same, different name. Yeah. But Beshear went down in flames on his vetoes. Was it 32-0?
Yeah.
32-0. So guess what? Frankfurt and the Republicans there, I praise them. I support them. I look up to them. And what they're doing with our JCPS here, God bless you. Thank you. And please keep fighting for Jefferson County. There's more good people here than you know, and you're doing the right thing. But Craig Greenberg, I do believe Metro Council is working with Craig Greenberg, left, right, and the middle. Like they do. You know why? Because he's a powerful man. He's very smart. He's a lawyer, and he's got the money. And a lot of people seem to be favoring money over truth, and that's a huge problem for me.
Yep, I agree. And the last hot button issue that we've got is just today, the Courier-Journal posted an article in which they say a high-ranking Louisville Metro police official recently instructed all department personnel not to respond to questions or requests from the city government's police accountability arm, the Office of Inspector General, in an email that was sent out. So, what are your thoughts on that? Is the mayor actually supportive of Louisville Metro PD, and that includes supporting accountability when there is some error? So in this case, the mayor is, not the mayor, the Metro Police Department has basically told its officers not to cooperate with the Office of Inspector General. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, from what I've heard, and like I said, I'm going to wait till I got the facts, but the facts are coming, right? But I think there's even a cease and desist order in there coming from a very high up official. I'll just leave it at that because I'm not one to throw names out there and attack. The only person, that was a campaign promise that I would only come after Greenberg. But
right.
yeah, LMPD, there's some things going on and it's coming to light.
YOCUM4Louisville.com. YOCUM4Louisville.com.